It sounds like Jayden Quaintance could be returning soon, and if he does, it completely changes Kentucky basketball season.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, Jayden Quaintance might be returning soon, and if he does, it completely changes the way Kentucky's season could go. Also on today's episode, going to be talking a little bit about Kentucky and the point guard situation that they have. Jaland Lowe still out, practicing, yes, but still out. What does Kentucky do in the meantime to try and figure things out? And then to wrap up the show, Mark Pope spoke in a press conference about patience, about how he doesn't have patience. The fan base doesn't have patience. And whether we like it or not, it actually might take a little bit of time for this team to get going. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers out there watching every single day here on Locked On Kentucky on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Jayden Quaintance is returning soon for Kentucky basketball, and I think he can completely change the Wildcat season if he starts playing soon. Mark Pope held a press conference earlier today and said that JQ is now gone from 2-on-2 to 3-on-3 in practice. It sounds like if we give it another week, he'll be practicing 5-on-5 and should just about be ready to go. But let's hold off for a second. Obviously, Kentucky Sports Radio reporting, I believe a couple of weeks ago, that we should target an early December return date for JQ. And I don't necessarily believe that he's going to be back by UNC next week or even Gonzaga next Friday. Honestly, if I had to guess, and I don't know anything, but if I had to guess, Tuesday, December 9th, North Carolina Central, or possibly Saturday, December 13th against Indiana. Those two games sound like the most realistic, I think, return dates for Jayden Quaintance. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, if he's back by that Indiana game, I should say, I think that's really big for Kentucky, especially considering what he brings to the table defensively. If he is back by Gonzaga, this could possibly completely change what Kentucky's season looks like, because beating Gonzaga in Nashville at that neutral site will obviously be a quad 1 win if it happens, but it would not just be a quad 1 win, it would be a resume-defining victory over what is turning out to be one of the best teams in all of college basketball. Gonzaga has come out of the gate firing, despite maybe some lower expectations to begin the season. They've beaten some quality opponents already. They've beaten Oklahoma, Creighton, Alabama, Arizona State, who I think is a little underrated. They are top 10 in both offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency. They are firing on all cylinders. And finding a way to beat Gonzaga and Nashville, I think, would require Jayden Quaintance being on the floor because of how good the Bulldogs' front court presence is. I don't necessarily know if Kentucky has the personnel to match up against a guy like Graham Ike or Braden Huff consistently. They didn't do it last season. The only reason Kentucky was able to stay in that game was because they hit some shots of their own in the second half, and Gonzaga got really, really cold from deep despite having some open opportunities. Kentucky can't necessarily follow that formula this season. They've got to be a little bit better inside. And if they have Jayden Quaintance, that's a resume-defining win that could shift you a seed line in March. And as we all know, matchups are key in March. If you're going to make a run, I've said it for years on this show. Some people disagree. If you're going to make a run, you want as high of a seed as possible with the best matchups, of course, but better matchups for you come if you are a higher seed. That's just traditionally how it works here, which is why the NCAA tournament is a losing machine. I'm going to go ahead and tell you to go watch SB Nation's video on that for the millionth time on this podcast. It's a great, great, great video. But Jayden Quaintance completely shifts the way that we could look at Kentucky in March because of what he can do in the meantime. If he is backed by Gonzaga, you could possibly get wins over Gonzaga, Indiana, and St. John's to start the season. He honestly probably changes a lot of what Alabama wants to do on January 3rd because of what they do driving and kicking. Could be a complete game changer for the Kentucky Wildcats if he is back out there on the floor. And I understand there are a lot of people out there that seem to doubt how Jayden Quaintance could impact this team because of the fact that he is recovering from his ACL injury and surgery. He might not be as athletic as he was a season ago. He might not be as quick. I honestly, considering how young the kid is, I don't think it's going to be that significant of a drop-off at all. And even if it is, what you're getting is a 6'10", 6'11", insane wingspan. You are getting a body to put out there in the front court that is going to be more physically imposing than what you have to offer right now. You also get one of the best shot blockers in the country. And again, I don't think you're going to need insane, out-of-this-world athleticism given his wingspan to shut down a lot of different opponents at the rim. I think he is going to be able to, despite not being as powerful maybe as he was a season ago. We don't even know if he's not going to be as powerful. That's just pure speculation. Anything that anybody wants to say negatively, it's just pure speculation. We don't know because we haven't seen it. But what we have seen is one of the best defenders in the country. That's what we have seen. Plug him into this lineup. I think he does wonders for you. NC Central, again, kind of sounds like the right type of date to me, just based on what has been reported. Early December return date. But again, if he is back by Gonzaga, and I would love for him to do so, shoot, if he's back by North Carolina, that would be incredible. Completely changes Kentucky season. Pick up some big wins if he starts playing soon. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Excuse me. There are a lot of different people out there that have some pretty negative takes about Jayden Quaintance right now. And I just want to tell you, you don't know until he steps foot on the floor. And what we have seen, the data and the eye test that we do have to go off of, is what we saw a season ago, a lottery pick at center. Completely changes Kentucky's season. And the Wildcats, whether they like it or not, I know that they're going to have to figure some things out at center, and I think they're going to get some answers pretty quickly. They're going to have to figure out how they run point guard without Jaland Lowe against quality competition. Yes, they've been able to kind of patch things up with Aberdeen and Jasper against some lower-level competition, but against Louisville, Jaland, obviously very impactful when he's on the floor, despite maybe some turnovers and some poor shooting, but still, it changes the way that Kentucky's offense operates. And then against Michigan State, it was obvious Kentucky just didn't have a ton of energy, and not having a true point guard sucks. What do they do? How do they do it? Let's break this down here in just a little bit. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner. In fact, it's basically already here, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long, up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. You can upgrade your kitchen. Everything ships really quickly. You can browse through their site, and it's really easy to find pieces that fit your style. It's nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. And if you've ever hosted family for the holidays, you know how much a difference a few touches here and there can actually make. Wayfair makes that super easy. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com and shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. All right, continuing along here on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, would love it if you did so. Talked about how I think Jayden Quaintance can dramatically change the way Kentucky looks and wins, actually, through these next several weeks. But also another pressing issue that the Wildcats have is their lead point guard, who completely changes their offense, is not out on the floor right now after dislocating his shoulder again in practice following the Louisville game. Kentucky has had to sort of patchwork their way to an offense with Jasper and Aberdeen, who I think have been fine, but against better competition are simply going to need to step up. Against North Carolina, they are absolutely going to have to step up. Against Gonzaga, oh yeah, they're going to have to step up if Jaland Lowe is not back. The things that Mark Pope has said about Jaland, I know it's going to frustrate a lot of people as far as he's always going to be day-to-day, and he's still day-to-day now, and he's not doing, or he's going through non-contact practice, He's making progress. All of these things that don't matter because it's not a definitive yes, he's going to play. I know a lot of that can make people upset and frustrated, but the reality is if you dislocate your shoulder twice, I mean, I don't know what you really expect other than, yeah, he's probably going to be in a brace for the rest of the year. Yeah, he's probably not going to be fully healthy for the rest of the season. He wasn't healthy a season ago at Pitt because of his broken finger. And the most bizarre thing to me is people coming at me and other people on Twitter saying, what are you saying? This kid doesn't have an injury history. He wasn't injured at all last year. The only reason he didn't shoot an average percentage a season ago was because his finger on his shooting hand was broken. That's the reality of the situation. He broke a finger last year. He comes back healthy. He dislocates his shoulder twice. It's going to take time to recover. So what does Kentucky do? I think, honestly, and I said this a few weeks ago, and I think you're going to have to keep it pushing there. I think you have to have Aberdeen be the facilitator. Otega Owe is not as good, is not a good ball handler. I mean, that was one of the things that we expected him to improve upon this offseason. He hasn't. He's turned the ball over a ton in crucial moments. He's been bad. Jasper, I don't think, is physical enough to handle the point guard position, play in and play out, but he has been serviceable. In fact, he's actually been really, really good, I think, in pick and roll, especially with Marino. The chemistry there has been phenomenal. The passes have been really, really good. But as far as point guard duties, every single play, I think you have to beg Aberdeen to be that facilitator, to be that passer. You have to try and get him into that mold now. They have to be better in the half court. And a lot of it, honestly, might not necessarily be the ball handling of Aberdeen or Jasper. It might be the effort of the offense overall and what is being ran. Brandon Ramsey has put out a bunch of different stuff about how Kentucky's Zoom action has actually been incredibly impactful this season. There were so many different sets outside of Zoom that Kentucky ran against Loyola Maryland that were just crushing them, especially at the rim. And yet they don't run it a ton. And my question is, why can't you do more of that against your quality opponents to kind of take some pressure off of Aberdeen, take some pressure off of Jasper, who is like a baby deer out there in terms of weight and physicality? Aberdeen has to be, I think, your guy, because I really like what Jasper's doing off ball. I really, really, really like it. And in fact, I think he's like the second best shooter on the team right now, shooting 36% from deep, with Chandler still shooting over 51%, which is just crazy. I think you let Aberdeen run the show. You have Jasper off ball for the most part. Let him get in with different plays, obviously. And ball handling, he's capable. He's got some shifty moves getting into the paint, man. It's not Rob Dillingham because the speed's not there, but he is, I would say, calm. Very calm. Not what you would have expected. But X's and O's wise, I think is the biggest issue here. What does Kentucky do at point guard? I think it starts with what you're calling, what you are calling in for these kids to actually run. I trust Mark Pope. Like, I legitimately trust him to figure it out, X's and O's wise. But you got to start running your stuff, man. And obviously he is, no duh. I mean, he knows a lot better than me. But against Carolina, against Gonzaga, against Indiana, against St. John's, even if Jalen is out there, he's not going to be 100%. And I'm just expecting him to be out right now. Again, I don't know anything, but reality is he's not playing. You have to figure this thing out now. You can't just sit back and say, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and not change anything, because Lowe is that dynamic of a playmaker. You don't have another player like him on your roster. Try and fit Aberdeen into that mold a little bit. Figure out what you're doing outside of him and just run your stuff. I really trust Pope to figure this out. Part of it's effort, I guess, but I think they will eventually figure this thing out. Kentucky's fan base does not have patience. They don't have patience for Kentucky to figure it out on offense. They don't have patience in losses like the Michigan State one where the team doesn't show effort. This fan base does not care. And to be honest with you, I can appreciate the lack of patience. I have a lack of patience. After the Michigan State game, I lost it on here saying, this is bad, and it is. But the reality is, whether I'm upset, whether you're upset, whether Pope's upset, it doesn't matter. Because whether we ride the roller coaster or not, it's honestly probably going to take this team a little bit of time to get going. The full picture is not in focus yet. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Before we get to it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. College basketball is back. I obviously could not be more excited. This is the best time of the year for me. It's the rivalries, the energy in the stands, the vibes. There is literally nothing like it, especially at Kentucky. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. And I can go ahead and tell you, as someone who has been actively looking for Kentucky tickets, that's true. It's endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout, but to kind of calm myself down to go and get tickets the best possible place, I use Game Time. It's the app that gives advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. This is not a bit. This is not a joke. I use Game Time for literally everything, and I used it to get some tickets to the Gonzaga game in Nashville here in about a week and a half. Really excited about it. This is going to be the second time I've been in Bridgestone. The first time I was in Bridgestone was at SEC Media Days when everything was empty. I'm so excited to actually see this arena from my seat, which they've got seat views. They are incredible. It's going to be better in person. I'm really looking forward to it. And if you want to get your tickets with Game Time, and I would strongly encourage you to do so, take out the guesswork, I should say, by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, and using code LOCKEDONCollege, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. We've talked about Jayden Quaintance. We've talked about how the offense honestly just needs to take a step forward and lock in. That's kind of it. Like from everybody's perspective, you just need to focus and lock in and give a little bit more effort with Jaland Lowe out, with your offensive engine not on the floor. Kentucky's fan base, again, like I mentioned, they don't have patience. Mark Pope knows that. I actually, I need to correct myself from earlier. I believe it was the radio show that he was on, not a press conference, when he was talking earlier today. And he started talking about how the fan base doesn't have patience, and he says he doesn't either. And this was the quote that I want to look at here. We have to go win, and we've got to go win now. So I'm not trying to encourage BBN to be patient. Being patient, I'm impatient. We're all impatient. We've got to go get better. That's what we're working to do. Nobody is content at 4-2. With the only two teams you played worth their salt, horrible losses. That Louisville game, you almost made a comeback, but you were getting drubbed by the Cardinals. Against Michigan State, it was not close for the final 3/4 of that game. You were not giving any sort of effort to possibly get yourself back into that one. They hit a few shots in the first half, and you laid down like a dog, and you just gave up. Kentucky's not happy. I'm not happy. You're not happy. Pope's not happy. And I guarantee you, it might not be the whole roster, but there are players on this team that are not happy about it. Some of them have already vocalized that. Losing is not acceptable, especially whenever you know what this team is capable of. You know this team has a high ceiling. We've already seen it against teams like Purdue in the exhibition game. This team has some really high highs because of how balanced this rotation is, because of how much better they are defensively. But the reality of the situation is, this team was probably never going to come out of the gate firing. Last season's team, they came out of the gate firing because of their experience, their shooting, and their veteran leadership. Give you a few stats here. Last year, the average player on Kentucky's roster had 3.06 years of experience. 3+ years. That was 7th nationally. Very experienced roster. Carried them in some big-time games. Duke and Gonzaga, most notably. That Florida game to start SEC play. 3+ years. This year, It's less than 1.5. It's 1.44 years of experience. That's what the average Kentucky player has. That's 180th. That's almost dead at average nationally. We went from being one of the most collected, experienced teams in the country to just average. And it's shown in a lot of different spots. Effort, shooting, energy, vibes. Speaking of shooting, last year, Kentucky shot 37.5% from deep. That's really freaking good. This year, 4.8% worse. It's 32.7%. Now, I expect that to rise to a high 33%, low 34% by the time all is said and done. The team gets healthy, they get going, etc. Anything higher, and I think Kentucky should be content. In fact, if it's over 35%, Kentucky puts themselves, I think, in that national championship tier. Because if you want to go back and look at the last decade or so, when it comes to three-point shooting from your national champions, all of them are clearing 35% as of late, not by a significant amount, but they're still doing it. I expect them to get close to that, if not around there. And if they can be a 35% plus shooting team, that's really good, by the way, guys. They should be content. But they don't have the personnel to go nuts from beyond the arc like they did a season ago. So it was experience, players just simply knowing what to do for Pope and knocking shots down in some big-time games last year. And then the veteran leadership. Last year's personalities, I would argue, and I think this is a subjective take, probably. Last year's personalities were more vocal, they were more connected, they were just simply louder, right? This year's Kentucky is a little bit more reserved. Again, I would argue, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but it's not as loud as it was a season ago. Owe is not a loud player. He's not a vocal, crazy, energetic player, right? Aberdeen is not a crazy, vocal, energetic player. Last year, Butler, Carr, Brea, Jackson, you saw them erupt emotionally in some big-time moments. Kentucky just doesn't have those personalities this season. They're a little bit calmer. They're a little bit more reserved. And again, that's not a bad thing, but it's just not there, right? Kentucky is not patient. I'm not patient. Again, we are not patient. But at the end of the day, I don't control the team. You don't control the team. The fan base does not control the team. It is the coaches and the players. That's who runs this ship. We can sit here and we can complain all that we want, but this thing is probably going to take time to develop. They are not as far along as last year's squad was to start the year. It is personnel. It is dictated by personnel, right? And it's going to take time. Two of your most important players that bookend this rotation are not out there right now. It's going to take time. Pope has urgency, which, again, he's conveying, and I think that's good, but we can't control the urgency and turn it into something positive. They have to do that. We can only sit back and watch and support. And again, the train's probably going to it's going to take a little bit to get going along. It's going to take a little bit to start chugging along. In my opinion, which as I literally just stated, probably doesn't mean that much. None of ours do, probably. But my opinion is that this is going to be a rough and tumble non-con slate. I mean, again, you've got some really tough games. Gonzaga, North Carolina, Indiana, St. John's, and the goal is to go out there and win. But the Wildcats are going to take their lumps. They already have. But my expectation is for them to take their lumps, to get the guys in, to get healthy, and shoot, even the first 3 or 4 games of the SEC slate might be rough, but the ceiling of this team, it's clear what this team is capable of. This team could win a title. Absolutely could. In fact, I think as they wade deeper into SEC play, they're going to start drubbing some teams, and you're going to look up and say, oh, Kentucky, with JQ on the floor, with Jalen healthy, they're actually pretty freaking good, so balanced on both ends of the floor. It's like a machine out there. I think Kentucky is unlike last season, is going to be cold early and get really hot late. I think they're going to be a really, really hot team that when you look up at March, this is a team that's going to be a 3, a 2 seed, a 4 seed, somewhere around there, and you are not going to want to play them. The reason that they're not as high of a seed as maybe some people would have liked because they took some lumps in non-con play. And you look up and, oh my gosh, Kentucky's coming in having won 14 out of their last 15 games. They win the SEC tournament. This is a team you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. That is my expectation. But again, my opinion doesn't mean that much. And we can sit here and be upset as much as we want. In fact, it's probably going to happen, but we can't control it. Patience is a virtue that none of us have. We'll see what happens, but right now we're not steering the ship. Honestly, if I'm picking the most important thing that does kind of steer the ship, it's the players. They've got to wake up. They've got to step up and do the thing. So we'll see. We will see. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for a preview of Kentucky's matchup with Tennessee Tech. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And of course, God bless.